Hi, this is Mrs. Ellison, and let me tell you more about some credibility in Middle Eastern sources. Throughout this semester, you've been working with a variety of news sources from the Western world. Likely, you are already familiar with some of them. This is what our news spectrum looks like. Most of these sources are somewhere in the center of our political spectrum, meaning that they are neither extremely liberal or extremely conservative, and generally they're credible. This class has also introduced some news sources from the Middle East to you, including Al Jazeera and Al Monitor. These two regional news sources are also generally considered to be in the center politically and also credible. So what should you do when these are the sources that you are presented with instead of the ones that you are familiar with? These are just a few of the news sources that the Kurdish people may be familiar with. These also happen to have an English version to them. Here are some strategies to determine if they are credible and how to deal with the bias that is likely to be present in them. But first, let's talk about what happens when a news source and a government are one and the same. Some of the sources that you will encounter will be state-run. This means that the news source is a part of the government and is controlled by the leaders. The opposite is independent news, which should be managed by an editorial board. In the middle, you have news sources with ties to government officials. All three types are represented in Kurdish news sources. You may come across these two types of sources as well. Blogs are very familiar to us. Either an individual or a group of people are writing about one idea. Generally, they are opinion-driven and likely to contain bias, but may give you a perspective that's not easily available to you. News aggregators gather information and put it on their website in some way. They generally don't produce content. Learning more about a news source will help you decide whether it is credible enough for you to use, and whether you can deal with the bias that may be present. Strategy 1 is to look for an About or an About Us tab on their website. Sometimes that link is at the top of the header, sometimes at the very bottom. The link should tell you more about their mission and what they cover. It is going to present the site in a very positive light, however, so you should be aware of that. Strategy 2 is to find a third-party review of the source. I like to try to find a Wikipedia article on the actual source itself. If there is one, it may reveal something about its owners and its particular slant. Strategy 3, if those two strategies don't work, you are left with reading through the information and trying to identify bias. I look for overly emotional wording or images when trying to find bias. It's important to remember, however, that the issue of Kurdish independence is an emotional one for the Kurds, so bias will be present. Here's what I've learned about some of the sources that you'll likely find. This website, Kurdistan Regional Government, is the media outlet for the Kurdistan Regional Government, so it is a state-run source. But it will give you a perspective on what their government is thinking. It just won't be very critical of their government's plans. These two sources are established media companies that report on the news of Kurdistan. They both have ties to the Kurdistan Regional Government. Wikipedia reports that Kurdistan 24 is actually owned by the government and that Ruda Media Network has close ties to the family of the Prime Minister, the Barzanis. Use them, but know that they are always going to slant pro-Kurdistan towards Kurdistan. These two news organizations are actually not based in Kurdistan, but they are extremely sympathetic and pro-Kurdistani on independence. I would consider staying away from eKurd Daily. This has turned into a news aggregator. They no longer produce their own content, but occasionally pull relevant information from other sources and then upload it to their own advertising-laden website. You can Google the title of the articles to find their original location, their original source. That's a better way to go. While it is important for you to proceed cautiously and skeptically with some of these Kurdish news sources, it's also very important to gain perspective from the Kurdish people who are living in the region. I hope this helps you work with some of these sources. Thank you. Back to you.